I think on the higher level, the real challenge for the government that takes office after the 8th of February elections is to create hope and is to create optimism in the country, is to show the 250 million people of Pakistan that there is a road that they have prepared, there is a plan that they have prepared, and they can chart that plan in the coming 5 years. And that itself could lead to prosperity beyond where we stand today. I think that would be the real challenge for the government. Of course, at an operational level, the challenge is much different. Are they able to put together the kind of team that can then deliver the kind of deeper reforms that are needed in the country? Whether that's in the economic sphere, whether that's in the social sphere, whether that's in the foreign policy area, and especially the climate challenge that Pakistan faces. All these four areas are serious challenges that Pakistan faces. I think then the real challenge is to tell the people of Pakistan that relief described as just dole-outs is not going to help them. It's the opportunities that Pakistan creates for the people of Pakistan, for the youth that is looking for employment, is the real relief that Pakistanis are looking for. And to create that notion in the minds of the many youth who enter, that there is somehow a growth framework that can create inclusive growth. And inclusive growth is nothing more than creating jobs in the country. And of course, once you improve the productive capacity of the economy, issues like inflation will take care of themselves. So can we do all this through a thinking government by taking back the outsourced policy making of Pakistan? I think these are the real deeper fundamental challenges that the government would be facing as it takes office on the 8th of February. And one really hopes that they have prepared on these kinds of lines for the next 5 years. The finance minister is always the linchpin in taking a government program forward. At an intellectual level, if I was to think about the priorities, his priority should be to ensure that there is continued macroeconomic stability in the country. And the nascent macroeconomic stability that he would inherit has to be cemented by going and completing the current standby arrangement and then taking Pakistan smoothly gliding into a new program, an extended fund facility, and the least the delay in moving into a program, the least disturbance there would be on Pakistan accessing the gross financing needs of $25 billion this year, and so on and so forth. I think if that challenge is completely overcome, his next priority would of course be to give a budget which is not truly conventional in nature, and by that of course one would mean that Pakistan's expenditure reforms must come through. We've talked a lot on the taxation reforms, but I think what's become extremely important right now is to consider how he or she has to target the subsidy, how he or she has to ensure that the devolution of the subjects, the financial devolution also takes place, the PSDP reform, the pensions reforms. There is so much on the expenditure side that could be done. And if such a budget comes through, I think that would give a lot of confidence to both the local and the international investor. And then moving on, the completion of the 3-year program with its monetary side, with its fiscal side, with its structural side, including hopefully a push on the privatization, and eventually something on the SOEs would come through. So these are all the challenges that he or she has. But you also must remember that the growth architecture of Pakistan, including a low investments to GDP ratio, Pakistan's low savings rate, Pakistan's global integration, these are all part of the growth framework that one has to create, much beyond the brick and mortar. The story of Pakistan's software, how that has to be built up. I think, again, his challenge and his priority on the operational side and on the intellectual side we've just discussed. But what would remain key is what kind of team that he brings with him or her that puts together the agenda that we've talked about, how they can implement the IMF program, how they can coordinate with the other divisions, the partners, the energy, the privatization. They would become extremely important, and the investment framework. So all in all, I think his priorities are quite clear. Let's hope that he or she can execute them to the best of their ability. The understanding on the bit that the governments have done on the economy is that they have tried in their tenure, whether it was the big ticket items that the Nawaz Sharif government has delivered, whether there was the SARS program trying to target the poverty in the country, whether that was the devolution under the PPP regime and trying to push exports. But the fundamental analysis is that Pakistan administratively, on the policy side as well as on the structural side, has tremendous weaknesses. We have a weak export base. Our export to GDP is hovering at about 8%. Our investment to GDP is hovering at about 13.4%. Our FPR tax to GDP is around 9%. These are numbers which are disturbing to everyone. Our global integration is weak. The FDI in the country has been less than 1% of the GDP. The exports are narrowly based. So overall, a country which struggles for prudent macroeconomic management and has to keep going back to the IMF, which is your doctor of the ICU, is obviously not in sound fittings on the economy. And then you combine this with the fact that we've lost our edge on the low cost of production because of the high energy prices in the country, both the inefficiencies and our dependence externally. So if you look at the economy this way, I think what is a bit encouraging is that all the parties have now realized that Pakistan's muddling through option is not there anymore. Pakistan's reliance on debt-financed growth is not there anymore. So one's really hoping that this time the performance would be on the fundamentals of the economy, making sure that the energy sector gets revamped, making sure that the tax base is really broadened, making sure that the expenditure reforms are there, making sure that global integration is part of their agenda. Making sure that the FDI doesn't come in other sectors but is predominantly export based. And then, the non-tradable, unproductive sector investments that take place in the real estate, in the gold, and in the dollar, because we incentivize and we do not incentivize going to manufacturing or improving agri yields, is something that would, make center stage this time. So, all in all, every government has tried, but this time, it's a deep reform agenda that every government should come in as they realize that Pakistan needs a more surgical treatment if we have to, pull up our socks and, be equals not only in the region, but then try and catch up at least to the East Asian economies.